Welcome back to Dirty Pretty, the space where we own our feelings, honor our experience, share unfiltered truths, and talk shit, all through a lens of love. Today, I am honored to welcome someone who wants you to know that you are talented beyond measure and someone I call family, Katasha Lloyd. Katasha loves people and seeing them win while living their passions on purpose. In fact, as a career and leisure coach and a senior recruiter, she took her passion for helping others and made it her purpose. Katasha empowers the mindset, leisure first, career comes after. Encouraging others to fully experience their experiences, she invites you to consciously create balance and embrace living in the moment so you can skillfully practice the art of being present while thinking about what's next. Welcome, my friend.
Thank you. That was amazing. Thank you so much.
I just love giving the intro because every time I give the intro, people are like, wow, thank you. That's amazing. And my brain is just like, it's all you. I just go in and like pick out what I think are like juicy little nuggets that hopefully display in like this 1 minute sound bite of what is so amazing about you before we dive into all of your amazingness. So thank you for that because, lady, it is all you.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate this, Shan. I'm so happy to be here.
Thank you. So, out of all the things that you could have professionally chosen, tell us how you got on this career path of being a career and leisure coach, which is
Hmm.
like what I would call your entrepreneurial gig. Does that
Hmm.
sound fair?
That
Okay,
does.
cool. And also a senior recruiter, which is having your foot in the corporate land. So, tell us
Yeah.
how you got to this point. Keep in mind, it's a 1 hour pretty much show. Give us the high levels of, okay, how did Katasha get here?
Got you. Got you. As a senior recruiter, honestly, Shan, it was me knowing I had experience in one space, deciding to go back to school. While in school, like falling in love with HR through SHRM. Our university had a chapter. Never thought about recruiting prior to that. But I love talking. And when I was trying to figure out how do I transition like my sales experience into the space of, TA and HR, my professor, who was also the president of our local SHRM chapter, was like, Katasha, have you thought about recruiting? I'm like, I never did, but I like talking. I like to get to know people. So that's really how I got into recruiting. The senior title is just years of experience and, kind of honing my skills and my craft and kind of going with the flow of that. But just recruiting as a whole, talent acquisition, that was super happenstance. I just knew I didn't like what I was doing. And
Mhm.
I decided to have like a reset while going to get my undergrad. And while there, just falling in love with this organization and really learning what HR was outside of how I had figured it out in my corporate scope in terms of my previous role. So that was the recruiter piece. The coaching and the career and leisure coaching was just me like going through my job, like, gosh, I wish it was ways I could tell people information that I feel would be helpful to them as I go through this process. But I can't because of the corporate role that I have. So when I decided to start my business, it was really just from that. I used to do Tasha's Tips on Tuesdays, like back in 2015. And that really just started from like me literally looking through and being like, whoa, I know that, but did I know this before I became a recruiter? And
Mhm.
once that bub came off, it was like, there's so much that I feel folks just don't know in the space of looking to navigate through career. Leisure comes first. I love that you added that. Leisure comes first, career comes after is really just that too. Knowing that our lives and what makes us happy is aligned with our careers. And I've never felt like my career was the most important. It's important, right? It's super up there, but it was never the most important. So that's kind of how I got into the entrepreneurship space in terms of my business and wanting to help people navigate through career while navigating through life and seeing how those two things are the same. It's not you have your job and then you have your life. It's like you break up every day and you go to your job for a few hours, and that is a part of your life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So for people that are watching this and they're a little triggered by that,
Yeah.
right? Because collectively in our culture, we're basically brought up to be these like robots that are like, I go to work and I do things to make money so I can sustain living and eat,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So for those that are triggered by that, and I imagine you have this conversation with the people that are, you're working with in your recruiting area
Mhm.
of your professional life.
Mhm.
Give them some insight into what you mean and how you encourage people to have the permission to walk with that leisure first, career comes after.
Oh, that is a conversation I have to have with myself every day. Myself first, and then the folks. Because you're right. Like we come from, I feel like, but speaking to the I, like my mom and my grandmom, and like I come from just a family, my grandparents, we work. Like we enjoy the work we do though, so it doesn't feel like work. So I don't think I really kind of like tapped into the, hey, no, leisure should come first. Until like I really within the past maybe 8 years when I was just like, hey, there's things people don't know. It's just never been my mindset to do it because I had to. I always felt like any role I've had, it was for means to an end, gotta eat, right? Like the shop, like like the travel. So definitely knew the importance of it. But I just I'm surrounded as I worked more in my space, I seen people who were just like putting so much into the work part. And I would like just from conversations or relationships that's built, it's just like, gosh, I wish it was a way that I can kind of like at least help give a safe space, like, hey, I got you. Like, our jobs are important, taking care of our families are important, but what if we just focus a little bit of that inch by inch on how important it is for us to kind of like just want to focus on ourselves first. So I'm triggered by that in my own space, but I try to, with each day, just realize the blessing of being able to still be here and to, have a little part of what I do as what I love, which is communicating, connecting, hearing people's stories. That's what I do in my job. Like it's interviewing, yeah, it is that, right? But it's more so like I get to hear people's like stories. Sometimes it's like kind of paved into their career, but I learn about their lives as they tell me about their careers. And I love doing that. So I hope that answered the question, but ultimately it's just like I try to remind myself that this is a blessing. And but also know that if I gotta put like the boots on and get to what we gotta get to, like that part is always there. The leisure can hold off a little bit when we get to those spaces.
Yeah, I hear you. It sounds like you're not saying like prioritize one over the other, but
Right,
find a balance, right? And I
right.
really appreciate as a coach and as a professional that you point out that while this is what you devote yourself to, you trip over it as well continually,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And I have the same experience. Like there will be times where I will find myself in the leisure because the work has been completed or I'm in a good place, right? And then I feel like I'm doing too much leisure. Then I get into this guilt headspace of like coming from that corporate 9 to 5, having worked since I'm like 15 years old, right? And really having that hustle mentality that seems to be really popular in our culture.
Yeah.
And I also have to check myself, not only on that balance aspect that we're talking about, but also noticing how I am treating myself, guilting myself, and making myself aligned to somebody else's standard, somebody else's version of sustainability, right? And giving yourself the freedom and the liberation to say, wait a minute, I get to say how this goes,
Yes,
right? And so I
yes.
think that sometimes people in the corporate arena feel like they don't have any power. They feel like they don't have any power to stand up for themselves and say, hey, like I'm burnt out. Hey, I can't take one more, project or responsibility. So when you said that I listened to their story, how do you how do you formulate where to kind of place someone or maybe identify where they might be befitting for a career path in
Mhm.
alignment with perhaps somebody who tends to be like myself and yourself can get stuck in that, wait a minute, I got to be going, 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 going all the time, and then clings to that and gets fearful, and then they just throw the leisure out. How do
Mhm.
you kind of listen to their story and say, here's how we find what's best for you to create this balance?
That's a good question. So, and I'll kind of switch gears a bit. So if we're speaking to like the recruiting side, there is like a process, right?
Yeah.
There are some questions I have to ask, right?
Mhm.
And I call those my housekeeping questions, right? So my style is very conversational though. And so really the story it's less about, hey, I'm interviewer, your applicant candidate, you need something, I'm here to give it. Like I don't even put that energy into how I connect with my applicants. It really is just, hey, I know you're interested because either you applied or, someone sent your resume to me or however we were able to cross paths. Like this might be a good role. So let's kick it. Let's talk. Let's chat. I don't say that to my candidates. Some I do, but it's
I
like,
love it.
let's just kick it. Right. But just being open, I think that folks get my energy and just like who I am, like pretty early on.
Mhm.
I give a lot of information away. I think I get that a lot from my candidates, my applicants, where they're like, gosh, you just tell me everything. And I literally do. Like I'm their advocate. That's a part of my role, I feel. So I let them know, hey, my job is to kind of advocate for what you want in rooms that you're not in, right?
Yeah.
So, as we go through this process, there'll be certain touch points, but ultimately, I want you to be comfortable. I want you to know that I want to gain your trust, in terms of knowing that, hey, I'm going to be transparent. I'm going to be authentic. That's all I know how to do. So I'm going to be authentic, but I want to make sure this works. So the storytelling part just comes as a part of that. Just really me setting the stage as I'm probably not like any other recruiters you work with, and that's okay.
I
Every
love
job
that.
I've had, I've done it different, right? I'll go in and they're like, hey, so you're supposed to do this. And I'm like, really? Have you guys thought about like if we did this? Right. Sometimes that's good. Sometimes it's like, there's metrics and there's all these things. But I'm like, hey,
Yes.
if you're in a role where the purpose is to connect, I'm a natural connector. Like I was born really just having this thing of like, hey, what are you guys doing? Okay, that sounds cool. This is this is what I'm doing. Right. And so I literally like that is a big part. In terms of my clients though, when I'm not in the more structured corporate space, I like to ask about their desires lists. I like to ask about what they wanted to do when they were like, what did you want to be when you were little? Like, what did you like? Did you want to be like an astronaut or like, did you just know, like, I want to be a talker, I want to be a lawyer, whatever it was. Like, I tend to want to take folks back to like, that space where you were the most aligned with what you wanted to be before all the other stuff came in and things change your mind, education and all of these things. So that's typically a start. That's actually on my questionnaire. If I work with someone, one of the questions I ask about music, right? Everything I do is going to have like, what's your favorite R&B band or what's your favorite kind of music? So I speak to like what music you love, what did you love as a child? And like, if you could just do it, like, what do you want to do? Nothing about career. They're coming to me for career advice, right? But when I'm getting to know them, very small parts of it initially is like, well, what's your next title or like, what's the next role? Those things are important. So I don't want to make it seem like I'm downing those, but my interest in working with you first is not necessarily that. I know that's going to come because that's why you're reaching out to me, but it's really just to get an idea of like, who are you and what do you like outside of this is what I'm supposed to say.
Mm. So for individuals that are watching this and they're
Mhm.
in a corporate environment right now, I think it's really important to acknowledge, I also came from a corporate background. I was building my business while working in a corporate environment as a full-time project manager. And, Tony Robbins has a really common saying that's called burn the boat, which is like leap without a parachute, essentially,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And for some people, that's good. For some people, that sense of urgency really works for them to light that fire under their ass, right? So that burning boat fire becomes the fire that's under your ass to get you motivated in and into whatever you're going into, right? Whatever you're trying to pursue, make happen.
Mhm.
But there are some of us, myself included, that wants to feel, I would say, a different sense of stability, right? We're not cut out to burn the boat. I am not cut out to burn the boat because then my attention goes directly to a panic, goes
Yeah.
into a desperation state. So for you, can you share for other people who are in the corporate environment what empowered you to say, I'm going to do this as a both and
Mhm.
what you think people should consider about pursuing that path instead of burning the boat if it doesn't work for them?
OMG, like that, you hit the nail on the head. Because that's also something I think early on I kind of battled with. So with my business, it started, so I told you how like I used to do the tips back in the day, and I never thought about it being like a actual business. It was just like, I'm gonna go and share this. Like I can't tell you why you're on the phone interviewing you, but what I can do is I can take my own platform, my own space, and just, hey, generally, if you guys ever thought about this, maybe consider that. And that's my way of at least putting it out there without me doing so like in the midst of an interview. So started off doing that, had no intention of actually starting making a career out of being a career coach, leisure coach. It just started as, hey, is this something I wish I could do? I wish I could help people. I would say like, I wish I could like hang up the phone and then like anonymously call some candidates back and be like, say boom, 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 and hang up without them knowing it was me. Without them knowing it was me. Like I literally like would think that. And it stayed there. It stayed in my spirit. So years went by. I think I started my business in 2020. I started doing the tips in 2025. So like for those 5 years, it just was little by little, like I really want to share this information. Like I really want to share this information. How do I
Mhm.
share this information? I'm going to share this information. My business started in 2020. We all know what happened then, right? So it was just like not even a choice. I got laid off at the role that I had. And then like I was already thinking about it. So that was kind of that leap, I guess, a little where it's like, I'm gonna do it. Like I'm gonna like just put the next 3 months into focusing on this. I'm not gonna look for another job. Like I'm just gonna focus on this and see how I feel.
Mhm.
Um, and I kind of did that. And 3 months went by and it was like, oh no, I really like this. And so I'm gonna keep doing it. I got a call to help out a team a few years ago as a contractor. So it wasn't looking for to go back into the corporate. I actually said, like, I don't know if I'll ever go back into the corporate. That was me for a long time.
I'm like, I remember this.
Right. You were there, right? Right. You were definitely one of the phone calls, like, man, I don't know. But I love this team I was supporting so it was more aligned with, oh wow, that's dope. Like if I take this, I get to help product managers and I get to learn all this cool stuff and like be with the creatives. And I had not had a recruiting role previous to doing this solely. So it was like, all right. I'll also say, so to answer the last part of your question is I always knew that with being an entrepreneur, I would still want to tap back into a contract every maybe 3 month contract once a year. So
Mhm.
in TA, especially for recruiting, most recruiters will start in this space by starting as a contractor, a managed resource, right? And
Mhm.
so I love this business. And so I was like, even if I'm just going to focus on the entrepreneurial side of it, like I'm still going to like at least once a year try to get like a 3 month contract or, just really stay connected to the industry. And so that's what I started off thinking this would be like. I'll just do the 3 months. I help out this team. I learn cool stuff. And I'm still there, still loving it, still loving the work that we're doing and the teams that we're doing it with.
And I imagine that having that foot in that corporate environment only empowers the entrepreneurial endeavor.
Oh man, yes. Yes.
Yeah. And it's a really refreshing perspective because you often only hear a one-way directive. It's like people start in corporate and they go entrepreneur. And you're
Mhm.
actually sharing the opposite. You're like, hey, it was COVID. I was doing my own thing. I was trying shit out because I got laid off.
Yeah.
And then I was like, hey, I'm gonna like dip a toe back into corporate. And
Mhm.
so for people that are watching this and maybe they are in the entrepreneurial realm, and the economic climate is not the best right now, and
Mhm.
it hasn't been for a while. What encouragement would you give them if their ego, right, is like, no, if I step out of this entrepreneurial and go back into corporate, like they get this mindset that they're failing, that they failed. So like
Yeah.
what encouragement would you give people that are maybe struggling and like, I know people that are just getting by the skin of their teeth that are entrepreneurs, right? And there can be that sense of ego that really gets in and makes you feel shame, embarrassment, right? So like what
Yeah.
encouragement would you give them to kind of say, hey, there's no one way here?
Right. Right. No, I would say just that, right? Like I get that a lot, especially with the space that or get on the corporate side. Like I work with a lot of graphic designers, right? A
Hmm.
lot of just product designers, product managers, but in the space that they do it with the line of business I support is so unlike the spaces that they're used to. And so what I mean by that is like I'm always encouraging them like to kind of like again stay close to what you love. Like stay
Hmm.
close to what you love doing, and even if there wasn't an opportunity for that or an industry or market for that 10 years ago, a lot has changed in the past, 5 years, 4 years, 3 years, 2 months, right? And so as those, especially if you're in a digital or technical space, right? So if I'm speaking specifically to that group, I think all groups, but specifically to that group, it's like just kind of look and see what's out there, right? But keep close to your why. You're going to need to keep close to that. So if the ego is saying, hey, I don't want to go back in, like I'm an entrepreneur and I work all the hours and I just barely get it and I'm a hustler and all of those things that we all tell ourselves, it helps to motivate us to move to the next level. I don't think I've ever been that. And sometimes like when I introduce myself as an entrepreneur, because I do like I say both.
Yeah.
And and I sometimes I used to feel not so much now like, oh, I'm not really an entrepreneur because like I am, I do work and I have a 9 to 5 and then I work afterwards. Am I getting it how I live? Like, am I, getting it from the mud? Like, am I doing that as an entrepreneur when I have this stability over here? When I have this stability of this corporate role? And I feel like, yes, I do. I think that
Mhm.
regardless of whether you're doing both or just one, right? So if you're right now focusing on entrepreneurship and you might think about, hey, the corporate side might be helpful for the next 6 months. Give
Mhm.
yourself a time frame too. That might be helpful where it's like, all right, I'm going to reallocate my resources and my capacity, right?
Mhm.
And so I'm going to kind of step away a little bit from, if I can give 100% into KRL, well, maybe I'll take 30% from KRL just for like these next 6 months or for the next 12 months. And like
Mhm.
put that into at least learning a new skill or a new tool, or even just like putting myself in and focusing solely on that new thing. Like give yourself small goals like that. But I just stay connected to my why. My why is as long as I'm doing things that I love, like whether it's on the corporate side and within my own entrepreneurship journey, is like I like what I do. And because mine are so aligned, right, it just makes it so much easier. Like I'm the same person when I'm speaking at my corporate role as I am when I'm speaking for my business. There's no separation or, oh, hey, well, now I have to be this. It all comes from me as a source. I'm
Mhm.
just like choosing, and reallocating and keeping up with my capacity of like how much of what can I give, with knowing that in my 9 to 5, of course, for those 40 hours at least a week, doesn't always take me 40, but a big part of my job too is relationship managing, is connecting. Like I think of that. So it's things I love to do. It doesn't even feel like work. And I got people on the West Coast and the East Coast, so it doesn't cut off. It doesn't say, okay, well now it's 5 p.m. Eastern time. Like, no, if my managers need me and it's 8 p.m., like, and we've already set that cadence and I'm expecting that they might tap in, I build that time into my KRL schedule to know, they might tap in. So I love it. I would just say keep going. I'll say keep going and try to make connections with folks who may be able to, whether it's your personal circle or if it's just, I say this a lot, LinkedIn doesn't pay me, but I use LinkedIn a lot. There's a lot of ways to kind of like tap in and kind of see what folks are doing, to at least give you the idea of, hey, do I feel like I could do that? Is that something I feel like could work? Would that schedule kind of work? And now so many people do hybrid, right? So you have remote and where you have to work from the office a few days, but you also get the opportunity to work from home. And not saying that you should use that time working from home, to do anything other than your corporate space, but I think that it just gives you that extra like, okay, like I know that I can come and breathe and sit here and I can now focus on this work and know that it's going to be stressful for a couple of weeks, but still have my time to kind of have that flow. So yeah, keep going, don't stop. Talk to people, ask for help, raise your hand if you can, or if not, just peep around the corner and see what you see.
Yeah, dig inside your own community even, right? You never
Yeah.
know who has networking is networking, right? And I really appreciate that you point out capacity. And I think that that's something that we need to learn and speak more about in just the world in general, right? How I approach things and get things done is not necessarily going to be how you approach and get things done, right? And I like that you said you like take a little bit from here and put it there. Like prioritization is what I hear, right? And a part of that leisure part I also hear is like you got to prioritize the leisure too, right? You
Yeah.
can't just be a machine because you ain't that.
Nope,
And
we're not.
eventually your capacity will drop out. And if you don't listen to it, it's going to tell you you're not that, right?
Facts.
So if I love your facts. Uh, so if somebody is watching this right now and they're like, I don't know if I need Katasha, but it sounds like I might need Katasha. How would somebody know, like, hey, I should seek her out because maybe there could be something that I could learn there? Like, describe the person that would come to you so people can understand where they fit in, of maybe where they could find value with you as well.
It's a great question. I know that's a great question. These are all really good questions. And I kind of came into this not having no idea what you would ask me, but just being open to answer everything. So I really am like, oh, okay, yeah, I didn't think of this question, but I don't know. I'm kind of in this funky space right now, right? Because I do feel that what I do is so There's so much energy there. Like, I just love if I meet you and I get to talk to you, I'm immediately like, oh man, like they're so cool. Like, I want how can I like help? Or not even if not just how can I help, but I'm very I take on and connect with people very quickly. And I've learned to protect that, right? So when it came to like my business, it was just like, no, I want to help everyone. Like if there's anyone that has any question just about any part of the process, right? How do I apply? How do I know if I'm actually going to get that interview? All of these questions, anything you could think of, right? Like I hear them all. And so it's like, I know I can't answer all of those questions, right? I know I can't work with everyone that has those questions. And so kind of how people have been like finding me or figuring out whether or not I'm someone that they might want to connect with, it's really just been from people sharing about me. Like I don't do a lot of, a lot of people probably wouldn't even know I have my business if it wasn't for me really focusing on the leisure first career comes after. I just don't know that I was there in my business prior to my son graduating, but that was always the goal, right? The goal was that, all right, I plan to step it up and I do plan to be able to give of myself more once I'm kind of leaving this part of the journey and entering into this new space. And
Mhm.
so now as I kind of enter into that space, I say if anyone reaches out to me and it's typically a consult first, like they'll just speak to me for an hour where you can ask me anything, how can I help you? Typically starts there. And then if we feel like, hey, if I feel like there's more I can do to help you as you continue on the journey that you kind of on based on what we've discussed during this call, there's an opportunity for us to kind of chat about that and see how that works. But no, I just say most people that do reach out to me is because they know someone that knows me or they've come across my business page. And how I kind of determine if it can work for us is typically that one consultation, the 1 hour. And then
Mhm.
from there, we discuss things where I'll always give you some points to take away. And if I feel like, or if you feel like, hey, this is something I don't want this conversation to stop with just this 1 hour. Um,
Mhm.
then we kind of go from there. But it's really in flow in terms of how do I move to the next. And it's been in flow on how folks even reach out to me to see if I'm someone they might want to work with.
So in your entrepreneurial side, then you take all kinds.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I do. Let me make sure I'm clear when you ask that question. So when you say
Yeah,
I
of
take
course.
all kinds, what do you mean?
Yeah, so there's not any specific profession that you're honing in to help. It's like,
Oh, yeah.
anybody could reach out to you and be like,
Yeah.
I don't know what I'm doing. I'm maybe miserable at my job or
Yeah.
I'm really lacking that work-life balance, right? Like so you could take anybody that does anything.
Yep. I seldom will speak about your specific career. Actually, depending on what industry you in, I will not speak about specific careers because I do have the corporate job, right?
Yeah.
Right. But no, it really doesn't. And the type of just like consulting and chatting and mentoring and coaching I do, I put more of a focus on it's really not the job, right?
Hmm.
It could be any job. Like a lot of what we're looking for in terms of just our up leveling. For some of us, we find that it's outside of that, and it just as a byproduct kind of seeps into what we're doing in career. So what you do or what industry you're in, no, that doesn't matter at all.
Do you ever have any HR generalists? Because I come from a background with heavy connections to HR people, like all the levels of HR, right? So do you have any HR people, and this is just my own curiosity, reach out to you to be like, listen, I think I could do what you do, right? Do you have anyone ever ask you about mentorship?
Well, I don't know that I get the question specifically to me. Like I'm aligned with certain organizations. Now I do get a lot of people that ask me kind of what you said, like, well, hey, like, so exactly what do you do? Like, I know I know a little bit of it, but like, exactly what do you do in this org? Because that's a big point too. Just because you're a recruiter, no matter the level, it doesn't mean that you're going to do it the same. Like, I don't feel like any two recruiters are exactly the same because a big part of it is connection.
Hmm.
And if I'm me and if you're you, like how we connect is going to be unique just because of who we are. Right.
Hmm.
So when I do get the questions of people like maybe wanting to know a little bit more about like what I do in my discipline of HR, especially if they're like HR business partner or generalist or just working in any of the other disciplines, I feel like the TA part is probably the one that it is the most heart centered, I feel, because you don't have to necessarily have a degree or a certification to determine if you can connect with people, right? I think that's just something that you kind of do. And by connect, it doesn't mean you have to be a super extrovert, right? I don't mean connection in that way. But just meaning like, are you comfortable with like getting to know about other people? Is that something that like, and I feel like if you're in HR, yes, like that's just how I look at it. If that's kind of the space you're in, you definitely care to, you know, help others in some way, shape, form, or fashion. So for me, it was just, I'm someone that grew up talking. I laugh about this a lot. Like on the report cards, always super good grades, whatever. I like school. So that wasn't like but she talks too much, right? she that that was on my report card. Like every every grade, right? So much that mom was just like, you know, Tasha, like we know you like to share and it's okay. Let's just learn how to let's still share. Don't stop talking, but let's just learn how to like maybe like do it in spaces and times. And that just comes with maturity. But
Sure.
little young Tosh was like, I love talking. I just love people. I love people. And I think the way you get to love people more is by learning. And the only way you can learn is if you talk. Well, back then, right? Like now there's so many more ways. But so that being said, like I knew for me, like the TA part, the recruiting part. So if you like to talk, now if you're someone who doesn't like to talk, it's not could do without it, right? We'll do it if I have to. Recruiting could still be for you because there's so many different ways now of doing it. But that's kind of what I do, what I share is like, hey, are you interested in like really connecting with people if you're thinking about recruiting? Because that really is a huge part of what you do. It's 90% of your role is to be able to at least determine if you're comfortable doing that and then move more into your comfort so that you are able to do it at the level that you feel you want to.
Mm. So we've heard that you really enjoy being a recruiter because you really enjoy connecting with people
Mhm.
and you really enjoy hearing people's stories. So
Yep.
these are what I would say three things that you really love about what you do.
Hmm. Hmm. They
What
are.
are what are three things that you find very challenging about what you do?
Oh yeah. Um, because there's that, right? So a big part of what I do is connecting, but it is also super like consulting and massaging egos in some
Mm.
cases, and like learning how to kind of like influence without authority, right? And it's a lot of that. And so though I think it probably was more challenging when I first started. I've been in this space now for like I paused on saying it when I think about but I've been in this space now for it doesn't feel like 15 years, but I've been in
Oh.
this industry for a long time. And I think early on, um, the figuring out how to
Mhm.
influence, it tapped into all types of just like triggers and things that came from my being younger, which is not imposter syndrome, but I'm a girl from Brooklyn. I'm from a part of Brooklyn that you really don't see a lot of people like leave from. It's an environment, or at least it was in the 80s, where it was just like some people I wasn't. I thank God for my mom and my grandparents and just my family, but a lot of us still we're afraid to like kind of say what we like to do and what we feel we do well and to kind of shine your light, right? It was like the best thing you could do is try to dim your light because if you're too bright, then like people around you there might be ways of kind of suffering the consequence from you like letting your light shine. And so I say all that to say that's still with me. I don't care how much I continue to grow and heal. Like I don't think I ever forget that I am the girl from Brownsville, Brooklyn. And so when I am that, and in many cases I am having to kind of consult and sometimes give a little direction and maybe say, hey, this is not something you can actually do right now.
Yeah.
That's a huge part of my job. I like to say you're not an order taker, like you're a consultant, right? Order takers just
Mhm.
say whatever, oh, hire manager, you say do this and this. Okay, yes, like no, like let's find a middle ground because I get where you want and I understand it. Like I totally understand that this is your scope. So let's figure out how we can work together to do things in the right way, right? So that we can make sure that compliance and risk is handled but also in a way that you feel empowered and that you feel like, hey, Katasha, I learned. And so that's probably the most challenging is just kind of like I said, influencing and making sure that when it comes to my hiring managers, that I am keeping them in kind of the right space of moving through this process when they have their own jobs and they want to move in ways that sometimes I gotta like kind of say, hey, we can't. Um, but that's not challenging now. That's actually what I like. It's the challenge, but it's something I like to do the most, right? When I think about kind of where I am now in careers, I like being able to kind of connecting with these managers. And again, we're all just people. Like I don't change how I connect with this manager because they have this title versus speaking to this person. Like I'm still always authentically myself. And so now it's just when I work with new managers, it's like, I wonder how, okay, let's see. Let me just go in, let's have a talk. Oh, okay, I get it. So they like a little less of this, this is kind of where they are. So like whenever I'm doing that, and that's new, that's always happening. So that's the challenge, but also I love the challenge of that and just getting to connect with folks and getting to know them and helping them figure out their why so that we can share our whys together and then we can kind of move forward with answering or resolving the issue at hand and keeping the why in the front.
So you said a lot of things that I think are really important there.
Mhm.
One, sometimes people get caught up on the word influence, right? Because it feels like it's leading a person. And what I heard and what you're saying is like you're encouraging them to see themselves clearly. And that's
Mhm.
personally what I love about being a coach is finding the blind spots,
Yeah.
right? Because we don't see them all the time, right? You can't see the forest through the trees, right? Sometimes you need someone to see for you. And
Mhm.
and it's to be helpful. It's not to control you or to manipulate you. So I just wanted to clarify, like you encourage people to their most authentic direction by seeing their blind spots,
For
right?
certain. That's correct.
Yeah.
That's the influence without the use of authority is such a corporate term, right?
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
you summed it up perfectly. It really just means I don't think in any type of space, whether you're leading, influencing, all the names, right? I'm someone that always wants to wants to do it with you. I've always been that person. So whether I am the person in the front or the person in the back or the person in the middle or someone on the side, like I've always been, my focus is always like, how can we do this together? Like I'm in this with you. I'm not in this to tell you, hey, this is what you should be doing. It's more so like, hey, let's get it. I'll help you. Like, this is kind of this is how I did it, but I'm interested to see like your thoughts. Like how do you do it? Oh, that's cool. That's dope. I never thought about doing that. Maybe I'll start doing this now. And so it becomes a collaboration. Um,
Yes.
and less than a, hey, do this because I'm the person that says that you should do this. It's like, hey, let's do this together. If it works, great. If it's not, we're gonna learn together and then we'll still move forward with figuring it out as we go.
Yeah, I think that's a huge misnomer about the coaching field, and some coaches do this.
Mhm.
To me, it's not coaching, right? You telling someone what to do is not coaching.
No.
You helping someone get perspective on who they are is coaching, right?
Yes.
You widening the perspective, you showing them the blind spots, and you regurgitating back to them like, "Hey, you said this,
Yep.
but I know you came in with this intention, but you said this. What
Yep.
does this mean, right? This is ideal for you, but this is what's actual. This is what's happening right now. How does this influence that? How does it impact the ideal, right?
Yep.
The other thing you said I really liked is like, this is Katasha everywhere. This is Katasha everywhere. I can tell you this. This woman is my sister. I spent so
Yes.
much time with her, and
Yes.
I really respect that because sometimes I get that feedback myself is like, so you come out here guns blazing with curse words, and it's like, I speak to every fucking one this way. This isn't for attention. This is just, I used to say this in front of my grandmother, God rest her soul, and she would say,
Yes.
Jesus, Mary, and Joseph every single time. She loved me just the same. And I think that that's so important when anybody is considering anything for their lives, not just working with a coach, right? If you can't be yourself in that environment, right? How successful do you think you're going to be? Because if you can't be yourself, your creativity is going to be tapped. It's going to have this ceiling on it of you're always riding against this limitation. And a part of your greatness is being yourself, right? And so like I worked in a corporate environment where there was cursing pervasive all the time. And for some people that was very unsettling and they left.
Yeah. It
Me, I
works
was
well.
like, these are real people saying real words. And then when you get on the phone call, you have a professional acumen. There's a decorum that you take. That's
Yeah.
not you posturing and
No, or
pretending.
code switching, right?
Yes, like I'm not going to go into a church and be like, fucking, fucking, fuck.
You know better, right?
Right. Like I'm surveying the arena and I'm being respectful for where I am. But if
Yeah.
I'm just being me and I'm in my professional environment and you're in your professional environment and you and I are out, you're the same person all the time. And I think that's super important for people to hear. If you go into an environment and you have to be contrived in any way, how successful do you think you're going to be because you're only being a portion of yourself? On the other end, though, parts of you are going to pop off at times. Parts of you are going to come out.
Yes.
So what are you going to do then?
Yes. Yes.
Right? You got to
Right.
be to be you to be
Yeah.
able to be successful is what I hear you saying.
Yep. Totally. 100% agree.
So the other thing I really liked as well, and I was like, I didn't even think of this, is that you have people come to you to the point you said earlier, and to the point we were just talking about, is they may have something in mind about what they think is ideal for them. And you're picking up on the breadcrumbs and the context clues. And then you have to reveal to them, yes, I know that ideally you may have thought that that would be perfect for you, but have you thought about maybe thinking about something else? I never
Hmm.
thought about how challenging that must be to really reflect to somebody who they really are.
Right. Right. Yeah. I mean, I think it, and I kind of just follow, right? Sometimes I say I don't lead, but if I'm coming to you and it's not polished, right? Or maybe some people may have an idea of how our conversation will go and some don't. I never go into any conversation feeling like I 100% know, right? Because I think
Yeah,
that's the blessing in being free and open to just for people just to be who they are, right? So I never go into, at least I try not to. I don't want to use never, but I try not to go into any conversation where it's like I just know automatically that this person's going to speak like this and they're going to have this vibe. Um, I see where it is, and I also understand that sometimes the vibe might be off a little now because maybe you're going through something. We all have life shit that we go through, right? And
yeah,
so I also try to make sure that I keep that in back of mind whenever I am connecting with potential clients or new candidates. But I just feel like I don't know. Maybe it's just I try to within being myself. It just gives off to like, hey, I want you to be you. Like and maybe I'll just do so by showing you like, hey, this is who I am, and I think I'm pretty cool, right?
the
Some
coolest.
might, some others may not think, but I think I just go in as being myself, and hopefully that kind of opens the door and allows whoever I'm connecting with to feel comfortable at least with knowing that they can be themselves too around me, with no judgment or no preconceived notions or expectations. Like so yeah, that's typically my space in terms of how I kind of go into that.
Yeah. And to me, that's just keeping it honest, right? Because
Mhm.
it's just so much easier to be honest. And that to me is also no different than when you walk into a corporate environment and they're like, okay, let's do a personality test. Let's find out what your color is. Like, let's how find out like where you operate dominant from, right? And like, I've walked into so many corporate situations because of my directness, which
Mhm.
is I know now attributed to my divergence, is like I just want to keep it clear because I don't like to muddy it up. And like, if it hits you wrong, let me clean it up. And if I don't get that opportunity, then it is what it is. But I've
Right.
walked into so many situations where people are like, well, you're so obviously an extrovert. And I'm like, no, I'm actually not an extrovert.
Yeah.
I'm just very direct with my opinions, what I'm professionally good at. And I think that's the importance of a coach. A coach
Mhm.
is not here to tell you what you want. A coach is not here to regurgitate your words to you. A coach is here to help you live your most optimal life. At least it is, in my opinion.
Yep.
And sometimes that involves hearing the great things, like you're wonderful and you're beautiful and you smell nice. And also, not the things that you also would love to hear sometimes, right? And I really appreciate that you have people coming to you and they're like, I want to be the Queen of England. And you're like, well, that might not be for you because you don't really like people. You
Right.
know, like I think that that's so refreshing because my interpretation of a recruiter is very, very small. Like I don't have a
Mhm.
lot of experience with that, but you giving us this perspective makes it more honest, right? It's not just like you go in with this dream and this wish of like, I want to be this. And the person's like, well, let's get that for you. It's
Right.
like, what's actually going to be sustainable for you is what I hear you saying.
Yeah. Yeah. Gosh, that, and I think that comes back to like just the heart centered and human centeredness, right? Like I get people who apply. So now going back to kind of the corporate role, when I do have people who are like looking into opportunities or looking to roles, and um, people have the opportunity to change their minds too. And
Yep.
I'm such a recruiter. It's like, hey, I don't care if you've been doing this for 20 years. You
Hmm.
kind of got into this. This is your thing now. Good. Like, let's figure out like what is it about that? How can you use that to help you maybe transition into this that can bring you into that? So that's another huge part of being a talent acquisition professional, recruiter, right? Is that my focus is on you, like on whoever I'm working with individually at that time. Like, one of the questions I ask is like, so you heard about this role, right? How did you hear about this role? And then you heard about it, like, what made you feel like I need to apply to that? Like, this would be so great. Like, it's so dope. Like, that's one of the first things I say to my corporate applicants. And I know a lot of them are not used to that, but it's just like, hey, this is a two-way street. And so I understand that. And so, I hear a lot of times, oh, well, I didn't do this before, but I'm really interested. That's good. Like I like that. Like, here's how, from looking at your experience, I feel like this particular role or these qualifications or, these responsibilities, they go in super alignment. So
Hmm.
how do we kind of help you with getting the things you need, right? To maybe
Hmm.
move into that space. And I think a lot of the times we feel like the things you need is a lot bigger than what it actually is, right? Whether it be from just history of how we're used to looking for jobs and kind of what your parents said and, kind of what your boss from 20 years ago said. And so I do, I do a lot of debunking of current true myths that are so myths. They're so not how things are done, but it's just what a lot of us have been programmed to kind of feel and be okay with, so that if it doesn't go the way we expect it, then we can just kind of put it back on the fact that, oh, yeah, it was because of, I had this role 10 years ago and I didn't get the certification then. Sometimes, right? That might be, but in many cases is not that. And so I try to just help with debunking those myths and with those particular candidates that you were kind of speaking of. Is like, no, you want to do this? You want to be the queen of England? Okay, maybe not the queen of England right now, right? But what about being the queen of England do you like? What about that job? Because maybe there's something else. Maybe there's something else that's not quite that, but it will still answer that same, hey, this is what I want. So that's typically, it doesn't matter the role. Like, I love the Queen of England, but if you want to be a product designer, if you want to be an agile coach, whatever, you want to be a teacher, you want to be a hip hop dancer, a hip hop break
Yeah.
dancer, start. I don't like people talking about her with her break dancing. This is kind of often, this is, I'm sorry, but follow your passions. Do it. Some people are going to laugh. Some people are not going to understand it. All of that being back serious again is, I say, hey, if it's something that you feel like you do have a complete passion to learn or to move into, it really doesn't totally matter what you did previously. It's just like, okay, well, what do we do now to kind of help set you up to be able to move into that while still living and putting leisure first?
Mm. I just feel so much energy from all the things that you said. And it's not because of the Queen of England. God bless her.
God bless her.
Um, God bless her.
Yes.
Because there is an empowerment to getting dirty, which is
Yeah.
why I love this conversation, which is why I created it. Like there's the mystery in the dirty. You don't know what's going to happen. You can pave your own path. It could be beyond your comprehension, the levels that you reach if you go for it. If you let yourself have conviction of like, get messy, you can handle it,
Yeah.
right? Like if you're impassioned by it, then go for it. And if that looks like you come into a fork in the road of your life and you're
Mhm.
like, this is going to seem really extreme, but I'm going to pivot and I'm going to go all the way left. And nobody understands it. Everybody's cautioning you away from it. Tasha is going to welcome you into a space that's like, okay, let's really look at this then. Because if this pivot feels drastic, what about it feels attainable? Right?
Mhm.
Like, let's look at that side too. Don't always look at like all the I can'ts because
Yeah.
we're so quick as a culture to devalue why something isn't appropriate or isn't right or isn't valuable for us, right? And I really also enjoy the thing that you said. I've had to do this myself, right? Being a project manager and then getting my coaching certification simultaneously, I had no idea the correlation between those two things. I just knew like this thing paid the bills so I could go to coaching school.
Right?
And this is the thing that I really like right now. I
Yeah.
didn't have any intention of becoming a life coach. It just kind of happened that way. I went to life coaching school to help my freaking self figure myself out. That's how I got there. And then after I was like, whoa, this is taking off. Whoa, I really like this. Only then, like this past year, did I really realize, oh shit, I manage projects for people for a living. I help people manage their lives. Shit. there's the crossover. And it
Yeah.
happened 8 years after I started my business.
Yes.
So I
Yes.
think that that's such a important fundamental thing to acknowledge is like sometimes what we want to be is even outside of our comprehension because of what, like you said, maybe our mom said this or, last employer said that. And so you're operating with that in your ear. That's the
Mhm.
voice you're hearing. Where's your voice?
Right.
Don't invalidate your potential before you validate the possibility that it could work.
Yep. Yep.
And
I love bigging people up. So even if I see that, and that's something also from a young age is we can think of all of the reasons why we shouldn't, but I'm always like, you could do that. Like, why can't that anyone can do, like if anybody can do it, why not, why not you? Why not me? So when I do come across folks, I've had I think in the corporate space, as you grow into like manager and upper management, I've had people in upper management that's really in love with just everything that's going on in digital right now, just in
yeah,
love with it. And the idea of maybe stepping down, which to me, I'm like, no, it's never a step down per se, but the idea in that stance of stepping down was like, no, like you got a passion for design, like love
mm,
to manage people too. And there's something that goes with that, but you're someone where that passion for design is still there, 15 years later, all the promotions and, all of that. And I'm the person that's like, yes, let's do it. You want, is this, I feel like you're great for it. Let's go. I'm always that person to my applicants and my clients is if this is if this is what you, now, if I do see something where it's like, hey, let's just consider this, right?
yeah.
It's nothing major, but this is something just to kind of keep in the rear view, but no, let's move forward to what your purpose and your passion is. I had a cousin that was murdered like really young in age, like really young in age. And I think a lot of kind of me, I had that before this happened, but I think after that, it was just like, no, like we're all here. Like we all, whether people see, again, I talk too much, my mouth's gonna get me in trouble. Right? Like I literally heard that a lot, right? So it's just like, no, but I learned as I got older that to me, talking is a way of connecting. And so it's
Mm.
not the talking, it's the I love to connect. I love to just hear and feel people and figure, right? And so I think no matter where that is, if it's your passion and if you have compassion towards it, and if you feel like, hey, there's something inside of me that's saying I have to do this. I don't care if you've not done it at all or what anyone says. It's like you owe yourself to at least as you feel comfortable, and that's where I feel like I can kind of help with my mentoring and coaching because I feel like it's the difference between those two things. But on either side, I feel like that's where I kind of come in. That's my mojo where it's like, nah, like you got it in you. So let's just speak about like how I can help to give you resources, just be your accountability partner, or just like be your hype girl or the person to be like, wait, have you thought about that? You did? I thought about it, but hell, fuck, let's go. Like
And it's
like whatever
authentic
it
too.
is, that's what ultimately, whenever we get to that, it's like you got this. Doesn't matter what anybody else says. If you feel like you can, try it. And worst case scenario, right? Worst case is if that doesn't work out exactly, guess what? You're still here. Like, okay, what's next? That it was worth us to kind of go through that. That's been my career. How I got to where I was to like being here. It's always been that like, oh, okay, fuck it. What's next? It's probably like the motto that I kind of go is like, all right, we got this. No matter, it's gonna
Yeah.
be good.
I really appreciate that too because, it's important to take the nuggets of wisdom from what you've learned, but dwelling there isn't going to move you any further ahead. Yes,
Right.
exactly. Definitely appreciate it. Don't bypass it. But like,
Mm-hmm.
are you also thinking about what's next? And
Right.
I can attest, Tasha's hype girlness, as you pointed out, it's very authentic because when I was quitting my corporate job, she met me for lunch and I was like, I'm nervous. I'm so scared. And, she got me a card that is still framed on my desk over here that says, you got this. And so like, this is just authentic to who you are. And, I also appreciate the thing that you are pointing out, and you didn't exactly say this way, but, I hear you saying there's a positive and negative to everything. Hence the whole dirty, pretty conversation. Like you're
Yes.
a whole person. If you're heavily laying into the negative, you're missing the possibility. So don't ignore the negative. Keep that in your bucket, keep that in your basket. But what other possibilities for gratitude are here? What other possibility is there at all? Where can you bring in joy? Even if just to say, I'm not ignoring this. Yay,
Mhm.
me. I'm paying attention, right? Like there's always a full perspective that needs to be honored.
Mhm.
And I hear that within you saying like, and it's ironic actually. I did another podcast yesterday, and the woman that was on the podcast was sharing with me that she received that she talked too much growing up in her life. I related to her. I was like, my mother used to call me mouth because it was like she is just always has something to say. And the positive side of that though is like if you look at human connection, not every one of us has the gift of being psychic, okay? And not every
Okay.
single one of us can just receive information through osmosis and we're like, "Oh, I know what they're thinking and feeling." Like this
Right.
is our tool. This is
Right.
how we relate and we connect, right? And
Right.
so I hear you saying like sometimes take the things that maybe hit you wrong
Yep.
or maybe you're using to deter you and
Mhm.
see what positivity lies within that thing. Because
Yep.
there could be a lot of positive to the things that maybe someone in your life didn't have capacity for, right? You could have been Tashaing it out and just talking, talking, talking in your authentic self. And that person could have just been having a day where they needed to be quiet. It
Yep.
wasn't in their capacity. So it's like, don't take everything that someone throws at you as what, fact,
Yeah.
right?
End all be
How
all.
can you use it as a strength?
Yep.
If it's true to you and you know you're a talker, how can you be like Tasha and say, hey, I'm going to be a corporate recruiter, hear people's story, reflect it back to them with my mouth, and use this gift for good?
Yep.
So, why, given all these pros and cons of being a recruiter, being a leisure coach, and a professional coach, why do you think that you're actually suitable to continue to carry this out, given all of these pros and cons you have to continually navigate?
Hmm. I think it's just with life experience, right? Like now I know so much.
Yeah.
I have so much knowledge, right? And I think that just comes with age. That sounds so cliche to say, but it's true, right? And I'm someone that always just like tries to pull from whatever worked, whatever I need to get me to that next level. And so I think now in terms of, you know, why me or why someone might. I mean, the experience is there. I'm just super honest. And it really is like, I think if I ever lose this feeling in the pit of me where it's like, gosh, I want to share this information. I want people to see that like as dirty, pretty our lives may be, like we still have them. And each time that we're able to kind of get through whatever we're getting through, it's just another gem to bring with us as we move forward. Career means a lot to a lot of people. It means a lot to me, but I've never been one to look at it in ways that I feel like a lot of my counterparts and peers have, and it's okay. I don't look at money that way either, not to get to that, but I feel like it's always about the experience, right? Like I love the people I work with. Every job I've had, I've like met close friends that are still my friends now.
Mm-hmm.
And that continues. So when I think of like having like my career and when I think of speaking to people about how they can kind of move and navigate through theirs, I come from the lens of scope that I have. But then I'm also just still have that pit of I want to help. I know I have information that can help you, even if it's just me sitting here with you and listening. Like I know that what I have to offer can be helpful to you, especially if you're looking into the career progression space. So yeah, I think that's why, just because I'm kind of me, I
I
guess.
just so appreciate the absolute honesty you're giving here today. Because as you're talking, I'm thinking to myself, and I'm so glad that you're on the show because I've been waiting to share this story. Is we went to Vegas,
Hmm.
Tasha's partner, myself, and Scott. We
Yeah.
went to Vegas, and I actually brought the Dirty Pretty concept to you all when we were at, I think it was STK.
Yep.
And I was explaining it to them, and they're like,
Yep.
oh, so, oh. And that feeling of, oh, it's in my heart. And I just really want to facilitate the wholeness to people. And that was like 3 years ago.
Yep.
So sometimes it takes a little bit of time to get behind yourself, but also it's important to have people that are there to nourish what is lighting you up and bringing that fire to you. And all of you that like Dirty Pretty are watching this, you have Katasha and her partner and my husband Scott to thank for really encouraging me to bring this to the forefront because it's taken some time, but you are absolutely authentically that cheerleader for people.
I love
And I
it.
want to thank you on behalf of everybody that you help for being that way because I am so spoiled. I get that benefit just because you're in my life.
You're my
So
sister.
thank you
Right.
for that.
Thank you. And I love it. I don't know if I'm going off kilter, but
No,
I
it's
love
fine.
what you're doing with it. Like from that conversation to now, it's just like, wow, like she really spoke this shit up. not this shit. That sounds bad.
No, it is the shit. It
Right.
is the shit.
But it's like, no, it's just it. I do feel that things, when we manifest, and whether you use the word manifest or not, I just feel like when we have something in us to do, like God is going to make sure that it happens how it's supposed to happen, when it's supposed to happen. And I love just everything about how you're doing everything you do, but more specifically speaking to Dirty Pretty, it's just like, this is so dope. I watch every episode. I watched the one yesterday. And it's funny too being your friend because I'm like, is her name Nicole? I'm like, Nicole, right? I feel like it's like people I've known forever. Right? So yes, I love what you're doing. You're so dope. And this platform that you have in Dirty Pretty is just going to allow so many folks to come on and get to the dirty pretty of life. Thank you for having us.
Thank you, my friend. So as we wrap this up, we could just go, as we always can on these conversations, into any million of direction. You brought up money. My mind's like, oh, we didn't even talk about money. That's another conversation, perhaps for another time. So
Right.
as we wrap this up, what final thoughts would you like to add? You know, maybe you want to expand upon something that you said earlier, or you just want to give people a takeaway from this conversation.
Thank you. I'll always start with that. Thank you. And again, when it comes to no matter where you are in career, right? I'm a career leisure coach. No matter where you are, just hold tight, stay close to the people, things, ideas that you love, right? That's the leisure to me. It's not like the travel. Now I like to travel again, but the leisure to me is not necessarily going out and doing all the things that's fun. To me, the leisure is life. And the life is those who you love, the things you love, the ideas you love. And so just stay close to that while you also climb whatever ladders you're climbing in terms of career.
Mm. Thank you so much. So for people that are watching this and they're like, listen, I didn't even know I needed Katasha, but now I know that I do. What do you
Yeah,
have coming up? How can people connect you and find you? How can they get
sure.
more Katasha?
Oh, wow. Yeah. So lots of things coming up, a few trips, a few staycations coming up. So the way to kind of connect with me though, to kind of see what's going on is I have my website, Carol Consultants and Associates. Right. So Carol Consultants and Associates.com. You can definitely kind of see what's going on there. I'm also on LinkedIn. Like I know there's all of these social media sites, but LinkedIn is that's my jam. Like I love everything that is about LinkedIn. So Katasha Lloyd there. And then on Instagram, I also have Carol Consultants and Associates. So yeah, but those are the ways to get in contact with me. Just looking forward to more loving of leisure and career and hopefully helping others have that same love of leisure and career. Leisure first and then career.
And can they get your tips on Instagram? On your do you have you have a professional Instagram handle, don't
Yeah,
you?
that's the KRL Consultants
Okay.
and Associates.
Okay, perfect. So I'll
Yep.
put all of this information in the show notes as I usually do. You send me your links for the website and I'll add those as well. And there's anything else you want to put in there, just send it over. That way people can have all the access to you that is available. I love you so much.
Love
Thank you so much
you.
for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you always, forever, whoever is out there watching and listening. As always, be good to yourself for fuck's sake. Live honestly in the dirty pretty of your life and choose to do the next right thing for you. Bye.